Oh, look, I tried to tell you this could happen, or that it should happen, and it should happen.
You are Locked On College Football, your daily podcast on all things college football. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Locked On College Football. I'm your host, Spencer McLaughlin. Thank you so much for making this your first listen or your first view every day. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day in your daily source to stay up to date with the biggest stories in the greatest sport on planet Earth. Realignment, coaching carousel, the portal, and so much more. Getting you ready for the season, which is 4 days away. We've always got you covered. This episode brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel. Right now, through September 22nd, all FanDuel customers can bet $5 and get a 3-week free trial of NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. How slick is that? Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get yourself started. Is West Virginia bound to fire Neal Brown? That might depend. And Boise State, speaking of the G5 and their playoff aspirations, they've named a starting quarterback. It is not who you think. We'll talk about that. But what do you know? Last time I discussed this particular matter on the show, I took all sorts of flack from many YouTube commenters out there, or Twitter commenters as well, that the notion of a G5 playoff was ridiculous. No, you shouldn't do it. It doesn't have any value. Did you see the piece from Ross Dellinger, Yahoo Sports? Quote, all of this change and potential change has led to an in-person meeting, this is now this week, in Dallas of commissioners from the Group of 5 conferences. Call it a G5 summit, where conference leaders plan to discuss some of the most pressing issues upon their membership, the bottom half of the 133-team football bowl subdivisions, such as NCAA governance, private equity's interest, and the House settlement related to revenue sharing model. End quote. And they're discussing an NIT-like tournament. So, would an NIT-style tournament for the Group of 5 have any value? Yes. Would it be perfect? No. Because in my perfect world, there is a relegation model in college football. You could incorporate the FCS if you'd like. I don't care one way or the other. Certainly there are FCS programs, North Dakota State, South Dakota State. You look at what James Madison's doing right now. There are other examples that can make that jump and be successful. But when you look at what could happen, let's just put away my crazy, wild, out there theory idea of let's create a relegation model. Let's say that that's not going to come to fruition, because in all likelihood, it probably wouldn't. But would there be any value to the Group of 5 having its own playoff? Yes, because what Dellinger lays out very, very well in this piece, which you can go read over at Yahoo Sports if you would like. I think Ross does a fantastic job writing about college football. What he lays out is that the access to the playoff for the Group of 5 is not locked in beyond next season. Nothing is set. Do you understand that? College football is great for so many reasons, but it's also the worst. Like, it's the best. As I say at the beginning of every show, it's the greatest sport on planet Earth, but it's also the worst sometimes. It's the worst with scheduling. It's the worst with making logical decisions. It's the worst sometimes with making decisions that support its fans. You look at the realignment moves, and a lot of those principles apply. But the concept of not having your playoff structure set 2 years from now, the NBA knows what their playoff structure is going to be. We all know what the NFL playoffs are going to look like. We all know. We have no idea how many teams are going to make the playoff in 2026. We don't know. They haven't decided. That's something that's going to be decided. So if you're the Group of 5, if you are the Mountain West, the American, the Sun Belt, the Mid-American, and Conference USA, and you're examining the realignment landscape, which has not been great, NIL has exacerbated the gap between the haves and the have-nots. You look at what Jamie Chadwell of Liberty said. They're in Conference USA now. And he said, that they're essentially a feeding system for bigger conference schools. In many ways, that's true. The transfer portal door swings both ways. The NIL door, it does not. That is a one-sided ordeal. But if you're trying to navigate that realignment landscape and convince, which is what you're attempting to do, the powers that be at college football that the Group of 5 should have an automatic bid into the college football playoff, what do you need to generate? What do you need to do? Yes, you have to win. That's paramount. You have to get teams in the playoff, and they have to put up performances like UCF and Tulane, who beat teams from the SEC and the Pac-12 rather than what Liberty did last year and getting their clocks clean 45-6. You can't have that this year. If you get a team, well, not if, when you get a team into the college football playoff this year in the 12-team format, whether that is Boise State, gosh, I'm so interested to talk about them later on today's show, or whether it's UTSA, or whether it's Memphis, or whether it's Tulane, or whoever it is, you got to be competitive. That's the first thing you got to do. The second thing you got to do, you have to give the illusion at the very least, if not a concrete notion with tangible data, that people are going to watch your product, that people are interested in what you're doing, that there is an excitement, that people want to see these teams play at a higher level. If you create your own playoff structure and you're the group of 5 and you just say, hey, we're going to play our own kind of NIT style tournament there. You know what that does? It gets people to watch. This show primarily, though not exclusively, there's some international listeners out there, much like the audience for college football, is contained audience-wise to the United States. You know what we love as a country in the U.S.? We love football. So if you provide the proper television window and you create buzz, you generate excitement for something, and you put it on TV when there isn't really anything else to watch, or maybe it's in a lull during football season. Can you imagine the end of conference championship weekend, which is the first weekend in December typically, and when the playoffs are going to start, or when there's National Signing Day, which is the end of December, college football calendar, very, very broken. Yes, we can't talk about that right now. What if you had, as the group of 5, an 8-team playoff or a 6-team playoff over a 3-week stretch right in there? What if you even just had a 4-team playoff in that stretch of teams that aren't going to make the college football playoff because they don't have the auto bid, but can go strive to play for something? What if you play in that sort of stretch? What do? You get people to watch. You showcase what you are. You showcase the passion that your players, that your fans, that your schools have for these football programs. You show the caliber of football that you can put onto the field. You have the opportunity. Again, I'm just spitballing an idea here. But to say that a group of 5 playoff, even though I would like for it, because it creates even more excitement and interest and intrigue, to be part of a relegation model, in the short term, if you're talking about steps you can take to increase the likelihood that when they decide a playoff structure for the sport in 2026, they want the group of 5 to be a part of it in a significant way, you want your teams to be talked about. You want your teams to be watched. You want your teams to excite people, to excite college football fans, to excite commissioners, to have television numbers that you can showcase to executives who we all know at some level are kind of running the sport. So that's why I think this is a good idea. I was pleased to see this report come about, and I wonder if any of you who were back at that time, you tend to retreat back into the corners of the internet shadows, and that's okay. I understand that's how it works. But for those of you who suggested that it was foolish, that it was misguided, that it was absurd to say the G5 should have their own playoff structure or anything that highlights group of 5 football and only group of 5 football, not playing against the Power 4, here we go. It's a meet happening this week in Dallas. I don't know if anything will come of it. We'll see. I'm interested, to say the least. Let me know your thoughts in the YouTube comments or hit me up on X, formerly known as Twitter, at @McLaughlin_CFB is the handle. Is West Virginia going to fire Neal Brown? We asked that question as a college football community last year, and we're going to ask it again this year, and I'll predict West Virginia's record with a pretty brutal schedule. Coming up next. Coming up right now, we're talking about Ibotta. Sandals, sunscreen, snacks for the kids. What do these things have in common? You've probably bought a lot this summer, and you will again next summer, and everything you need for the holidays, but you don't need to stress about the cost. Use Ibotta and get cash back on all of your purchases when you stock up on your summer essentials. Ibotta is a free app that lets you earn cash back every time you shop. You earn on hundreds of items, from groceries to beauty supplies, even toys, so you can make sure you're beating inflation no matter what you're purchasing. The average Ibotta user earns $256 per year. That could cover the cost of an entire shopping trip, that flight you've been eyeing, or the fancy dinner you've been craving. Whatever you want, you can have it. Right now, Ibotta is offering our listeners $5 just for trying Ibotta using the code LOCKEDONCollege when you register. Just go to the App Store or Google Play Store, download the free Ibotta app to start earning cash back, and use code LOCKEDONCollege. That's IBOTTA in the Google Play or App Store. Use that code LOCKEDONCollege. Go check out Ibotta today. 4 days to college football. Gosh, I can't wait. I know many of you can't either. And West Virginia fans were waiting for the moment, the game perhaps, going into last season when Neal Brown was going to get fired, because it was a realistic expectation. They were picked to finish last. He hasn't generated great results. And then he won 9 football games. Ended the year in a preseason top 25 poll. That's why you play the games, right? Go figure. Now, going into 2024, what do you expect from West Virginia? So I'm giving you somewhat of a 30-foot view here, but the recruiting numbers don't blow you away. Their 3-year rolling recruiting average from a composite score of their high school and transfer portal classes over the last 3 cycles, 2022, 23, and 24, they average outside the top 45 nationally. Yet you look at their S&P Plus, it's inside the top 40. Why? Because they're one of the top 25 teams in returning production from a team that went 9-4. You've got a quarterback that is returning. You've got a head coach that is returning. Every dayers that listen to or watch this show, I appreciate you, by the way. Shout out to all of you out there. Know that I'm a big fan of that particular combination because it's kind of a rarity in college football. You know, Aaron Rodgers and Mike McCarthy were a tandem for a very long time. You don't get that in college football. There can be adjustment periods and trying to find your stride and what works and what audibles do I like and not like and how much freedom do I want to give the quarterback and such. So I wonder if Neal Brown survives the end of the season. I do think it's reasonable to say he's still on the hot seat because if there is a regression in Morgantown this year and they miss a bowl game, well, that 9-4 love that you got from West Virginia fans and the college football community kind of goes out the window. Because then you look at Neal Brown's track record, you say, so that was kind of a flash in the pan. Like, had a good season during the COVID year, but that was a COVID year. There were a lot of coaches that did well during the COVID year. Stanford and Colorado, David Shaw, and, oh my gosh, I can't even remember, Carl Durrell. Both did well during the COVID year. Neither one is the head coach of their program today. They haven't been for the last couple of seasons now. So West Virginia starts off with a game that they are going to lose. It's at home. It's going to be an exciting atmosphere. They're going to have all the hope and optimism of upsetting a preseason top 10 team. They're going to have all the hope and optimism of another great season like they had a year ago, and then Penn State is going to go in there, and they are going to win the football game. And West Virginia fans don't like when you say that. It turns out fans don't like when you predict their team to lose. But Penn State's going to go in there and win. So that's an 0-1. Then Albany at home. You'll be fine. You'll be fine. That's an FCS opponent. I'd feel better about the Penn State game if I were West Virginia, if Albany was first and Penn State was second. But week 1, Penn State, it's one of the biggest games of week 1 of college football. I mean, you got Florida, Miami, you got Texas A&M, Notre Dame, and you got West Virginia and Penn State. Fun matchup, to be sure. The good old backyard brawl at Pittsburgh in week 3. They're a 5.5-point favorite in that game. I don't expect a lot from Pitt this year, and I'm picking West Virginia to win the game. I'm just keeping my eye on it because when you get a big rivalry like that, so many crazy things could happen. You know who was a 5.5-point underdog last year in a big rivalry game that everybody watched? Oklahoma. You know who won the football game? Oklahoma. Happens. That was at a neutral site. This one is in Pittsburgh. Just be wary. Just be wary. So I think that's a 3-1 start for West Virginia. Are they ranked? No, I don't think so. Will they be ranked the next week when they come back home and beat Kansas? Maybe. Probably not. But maybe, you never know. I do think they beat Kansas in that spot, but lose the following week at Oklahoma State. And I don't think a split there against 2 of the top 3 or 4 odds teams in the Big 12 is a bad thing if you're the Mountaineers. So you're sitting there at 3-2. This schedule just continues. Like, I want to like West Virginia. Returning quarterback, returning coach, returning production number is good. S&P plus in the top 40 post-spring transfer portal window. But holy smokes, what did they do to tick off the Big 12? Does that save Neal Brown's job? They have to play Kansas, at Oklahoma State, then host Iowa State, who's a popular dark horse pick to win the Big 12, and then host Kansas State, who's the second most likely team to win the Big 12 in the odds market. What's happening here? Oh, and then the following week, they go at Arizona. West Virginia's win total is 6.5. I don't think FanDuel actually believes that they're a 6.5 total win team in the Big 12. If they had a normal Big 12 schedule, can you give me the other Big 12 schedule that is playing Kansas, Oklahoma State, Iowa State, Kansas State, and Arizona consecutively? Then it lightens up. At Cincy, that's a win. Should be. I don't really know what to make of Cincinnati this year, to be honest. Baylor at home. They named DeQuan Finn their starting quarterback. I'll believe that can be a successful situation when I see it. I do like the offensive coordinator that Baylor hired in the offseason. That could work out. But then they have UCF at home. They go at Texas Tech. I think they're going to lose last week of the regular season when they go. Not because I don't think West Virginia is good, but because I think Texas Tech is also good. This is just, the Big 12 is the Pac-12 from last year without a national championship caliber team. They have got a bunch of really good teams, and you are going to have good programs, good teams with great players put up records that are really disappointing. The reigning Heisman Trophy winner in the Pac-12 last year went 7-5 in the regular season. And you're going to have teams in here like West Virginia with Garrett Green and Neal Brown, who won 9 games last year. I think more than likely they end up at 6-6. I have an or attached to a 7-5, not a 5-7, because right now I have that UCF game as a toss-up. But I think they split with Iowa State and Kansas State because both games are at home. If you gave me a home road split, that'd be tough. But then at Arizona, I think that is a loss going to Tucson. They beat Cincy and Baylor. UCF, I've got as a toss-up right now, which I reserve the right to assign to one game for a team going into a season. And the week of the game, I have to make a pick, of course. I will make a pick, but I just don't have a strong feeling right now because I like West Virginia, but I love UCF. But the game is in Morgantown. I like Gus Malzahn. I don't really know what to make of Neal Brown. He's kind of an enigma. Was last year a flash in the pan, or has he raised the bar on the program back to what everybody knows it can actually be? I don't know. I have so many unknowns with West Virginia. But I mean, seriously, if you're a West Virginia fan listening to or watching this, don't be mad at the Penn State game, okay? Don't come in the comments say Spencer, we could beat Penn State. Like, you know what? If you do, good for you. I'll come on here and eat crow like everybody else and their mother who's going to pick Penn State to walk in there and win that football game because, newsflash, they are. But what did you do as a program, as a university, as a team? What did you do to deserve this? It's the most absurd stretch of Big 12 games I have seen on any Big 12 schedule that I've broken down thus far. Kansas at Oklahoma State, Iowa State, Kansas State at Arizona. What's the easiest game in there? Ask yourself that question if you're a Big 12 fan. What is the easiest game in that stretch? It's probably Iowa State, who have a veteran head coach, a returning and incredibly promising young quarterback in Rocco Becht, who have a good roster returning as well, at least from a returning production standpoint. They're bringing back a good amount of their team from a season ago. Like, I don't know. And then you have to play UCF at the end of the year and at Texas Tech. That's like every Big 12 conference title contender. This is the Florida version of a Big 12 schedule. Okay, Florida's schedule in the SEC is unlike anything I've ever seen in all of college football. They are playing 6 games in a row on the back half of the season. It's 5 or 6 where every team is a preseason AP top 15 opponent. I mean, give me a break. Give me a break. That's absurd. This is also insane. So I don't know what happens to Neal Brown at the end of the year. What if they go 6-6? That's a regression. But look at the schedule, man. 6-6 just wouldn't be that bad. I'm not saying it'd be great. If they go 7-5, 8-4, Neal Brown keeps his job. 6-6, you start to have the conversation. 5-7, you probably make a change. But holy smokes, that's a tough spot for Neal Brown to be in, because that schedule, I don't think it can get a lot tougher in the Big 12. Speaking of the playoff, that's going back to the first segment on today's show. Boise State is a team that could absolutely find its way into the college football playoff this year. And did you see who they named as their quarterback? Probably not the guy you were expecting. Maddux Madsen. What's to know? That's coming up next. Coming up right now, though, is FanDuel. You've heard us talk a lot about FanDuel here at the network because they're our sportsbook sponsor and they're America's number one sportsbook. Well, we have something a little different for you. Now through September 22nd, all FanDuel customers can bet $5 and get a 3-week trial of NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. That's like 60% of your bet turning into, 1 week. I didn't phrase that well, but you get what I'm going for. 3 divided by 5, that's 60%. And then with a YouTube TV base plan, you'll be able to watch every regular season Sunday afternoon out-of-market game. All you need is a Google account and a current form of payment, and you can cancel any time. FanDuel is also your one-stop shop for everything college football related. Win totals, they've got them. Conference title odds, they're right there and available. National championship odds, everything is there. Just visit FanDuel.com/lockedon. Download America's number one sportsbook. That's FanDuel.com/lockedon. FanDuel, official sportsbook sponsor here at the Locked On Network. I know we're talking about Boise State here, but I still feel bad for West Virginia. That schedule, Kansas, Oklahoma State on the road, Iowa State, Kansas State at Arizona. What is this? What is this? I don't know. But what is this is probably what some of you thought, myself included, when Boise State named Maddux Madsen the starting quarterback. So he beats out a former top 5 quarterback in the class of 2023 and USC commit Malachi Nelson, who transferred there this offseason. I thought he was going to be the starter. Now, to people in Boise, perhaps it is not as surprising. Perhaps those who have watched the quarterback battle, media members that cover the team or coaches or players, whoever, they're not surprised that Madsen has been named the starting quarterback. I'm just telling you from where I'm sitting, this was a surprise. And I know I'm not the only media member that feels this way, because I texted a couple people I know and said, "Did you see that?" And they had the same reaction I did. Like, really? Wow. Now, you can interpret this one of two ways. Something is wrong with Malachi Nelson, and he's never going to be the highly touted prospect that he's capable of with the physical traits that he has and that everybody saw when he was being evaluated as a recruit coming out of high school. Or number two, you could see this as, hey, this Maddux Madsen guy, if he's beating out Malachi Nelson, well, he must be quite good. Remember, Dirk Cutter is back as the offensive coordinator. He was not there last year. He was in 2022, but he's back as the offensive coordinator, has a pretty solid track record in that particular role. Spencer Danielson was the interim, takes over as the head coach, and he's looking for stability at the quarterback position because over the final stretch of the season, didn't have that all the time, particularly in the bowl game when adjustments had to be made when they played UCLA. If they'd had a good quarterback situation, would they have won? Maybe. They were winning that game early on, but that matters not now. So Maddux Madsen last year in 9 appearances completed 61% of his passes, 9 touchdowns, 3 interceptions. He does not in his career have a game in which he has thrown for 300 or more yards. I just paused to let that kind of marinate for a moment, let you think about, well, why would they go with this sort of guy? Keep in mind, he's still thrown a lot more passes in his college career than Malachi Nelson. That's number one. And number two, do you think this was an inside job? Do you think the coaching staff had it out for Malachi Nelson? You think they went and got somebody like that in the transfer portal because they thought, yeah, let's bring him in as a backup quarterback? No, I think they brought him in to compete for the starting job, and Maddux Madsen just beat him out. So he's going to have a team around him that, according to S&P Plus, is a top 50 unit in all of college football, roster-wise, and S&P Plus measures a variety of things, recent recruiting rankings and returning production. Those are the most important metrics that it looks at, but there are others as well. And I was surprised to see this, but then I thought, well, maybe Malachi Nelson just isn't what we thought he could be, or maybe Maddux Madsen is something nobody thought he could be. He did not have a 24/7 composite rating. His 24/7 rating was a 3-star guy coming out of high school. He was outside the top 100 at his position. But there's a lot more to quarterback than being big and throwing the ball really far. Just ask, I don't know, Jamarcus Russell, for instance, is a name that comes to mind. I'm really interested to see how this plays out because Boise State, if they get good enough quarterback play, can go 10-2. That's the record that I predicted for them here on this show. I'm not wavering off of that prediction until I see Maddux Madsen play. Because if he beat out Malachi Nelson, I thought Malachi was going to be the starter. That was just my assumption. But if Madsen beat him out, I think it is more likely that the coaching staff saw something in him that Nelson was not able to bring to the table and that they feel is going to be a great benefit to the offense. So fascinated to see how this works out. He doesn't have huge numbers in his career yet, but we'll see what he does as a full-time starter. He's got a great running back, should have a good receiving core, and they should have the best roster in the Mountain West. So, more than a little interested to see if Maddux Madsen is the quarterback of a college football playoff team in 2024. That could happen. Speaking of quarterback battles, a couple other notes that I might dive into more later in the week, but seeing as this is a college football show, this was flying all around the interwebs. Sam Leavitt is named the starter at Arizona State. No surprise there. Danny O'Neal, the starter at San Diego State. Don't think that's a major surprise. Year one for Sean Lewis. You don't have a bunch of big expectations. Go develop a young quarterback. Get him ready for next season. I like that move. Sam Leavitt at Arizona State, by the way. That guy was not some slouch recruit coming out of high school. Go look at his recruiting profile. He's a pretty solidly rated 4-star guy. So if Kenny Dillingham and company can get it to work, we'll see. We'll see if Arizona State's a bowl team this year. DeQuan Finn named the starting quarterback at Baylor. I don't know. Again, you know how excited I am for the season to answer all these questions? Think about that. Of those guys, plus Malik Murphy at Duke, named the starter. Miller Moss at USC, not surprising. Will Howard at Ohio State. I never thought they were going to get off of Will Howard, but it was certainly a longer process to name the starting quarterback up there in Columbus than I thought it was. But think about these names and all the quarterbacks that I've read to you here that have been named the starters going into week one. Maddux Madsen at Boise State, DeQuan Finn at Baylor, or Will Howard at Ohio State, or I'll throw Miller Moss at USC into that mix as well. Which of those guys has the greatest impact on his team? Because you can look at these angles from a number of different sides. Miller Moss at USC, does he continue the great line of USC quarterbacks? I suspect that he does, not because of one game, but because of who his coach is and what his weapons are. If he does that and the defense takes any step forward, is that an 8-9 win team rather than a 6-7 win team? Probably. Could they even be a 10-win team? Their schedule might not let them do that, but I do have them at 9-3, 10-2 not out of the realm of possibility. Will Howard, is he going to be a starting quarterback for a Big Ten champion team? For a national champion team? That could be a big impact. Will DeQuan Finn at Baylor be a guy that saves Dave Aranda's job? Because he is on a scorching hot seat going into this season. And then the guy I started this segment with, Maddux Madsen at Boise State. Is he the quarterback of the first ever Group of 5 automatic berth into the college football playoff? In 4 days' time, we will have a handful of college football games that we'll all be able to watch. College game day will be on our televisions this Saturday morning. I cannot overstate my excitement for college football to be here. But those are legitimate questions. But think about those guys, all named starting quarterbacks this week, and in different ways can shape their team's college football seasons in a rather significant way. Thanks for making this your first listen or first view of the day. For your second, go check out Locked On Sports today. Peter Bukowski hosts over there with You guessed it, the biggest stories in sports all across the sportsverse. A word that I just made up. Appreciate everyone listening. I'll see you next time. And until then, hope you have a wonderful rest of your day.